Which island? Preparing for night. The wind that carried our hero's boat away dispersed the clouds, the sky became clear, and the evening sun peeked out. The guys decided to prepare for the coming night. They stocked up on brushwood, chopped wood from the remaining logs, oddly enough, with an axe, which oddly enough was left untouched by the creature. It was stuck in a tree near the dining room. It can be used as a weapon, too, thought Roma. Ivan found a first aid kit in his things and bandaged Max. His leg ached a lot, especially when he stood up, because all the blood rushed to the wound, causing an unpleasant sensation. When we have finished with firewood, Roman and Maxim began to whittle something like spears out of sticks, picked more or less even. Kolya dragged the stones to have something to defend the approaching creature. A pity that gasoline was left in the boat. We could make hammers. Ivan, after bandaging Max, began to look through the scattered things in search of useful things. As the sun began to set and a pink sunset showed, the boys moved the canteen shelter closer to the shore, where their fire was located so that, in case of rain, it could burn, and also made benches and places to sit. They were eerie, for they did not know what awaited them at night. After all the business, the boys built a fire and began discussing what the creature was, what had happened to the other campers, and how they could get off this cursed island. Which island? Night. It got dark very quickly, and darkness enveloped the mysterious island. Only the rays of the white moon illuminated the edge of the island forest and those parts of the shore where the light from the night fire could not reach. A fresh breeze was blowing. The sky was clear, filled with little lights of stars. It was chilly, but our heroes somehow didn't care, as the fire warmed them with its gentle warmth. The fire was soothing. They enjoyed looking into it and listening to the crackling of the wood embraced by the flames. All who sat around this source of warmth pondered. Roman was the first to interrupt them. We must take turns sleeping. I think that for an hour and a half. What do you think about it? I think it is too much, objected Ivan. But it seems just right to me. Maxim answered. Yes. 1 hour is not enough and 2 is too much. An hour and a half is just right. Nikolai added with a smile. It's decided. So we'll keep watch for an hour and a half. First me, then Vanya, then Maxim, then Kolya. Roman summed up. Oh, and one more thing. If anyone notices anything, then immediately, without thinking, wake everyone up. Yes, well, but do not wake up for any nonsense, bushes moved, a noise in the distance and so on. Max continued. At this point the guys went to sleep. By the fire they had made comfortable flat roosts to shelter them from the rain. It was dangerous to sleep in a tent. Strange that one was left untouched. All the things had been scattered by that evil thing, one tore up in the night, and left the other untouched until the morning. Time passed. All was quiet. Roman had already stood his ground and went to wake up Vanya. Hey, get up, it's time to be on duty. Roma whispered, pushing Ivan. Okay, I'm up. I'm up. Stop pushing. He answered. Roma went to bed, and Vanya sat down to watch, having taken his watch from the one who had gone to bed. Half an hour passed, silence. Ivan began to think that everything would be fine, that he would serve his time and go back to sleep. Another half-hour passed. There was a crunch. Our sentry became alert and began to peer into the woods, thinking, "Why now, damn it?" There was a second crunch. Vanya's heart started beating with fear. Now the third crunch. Ivan felt uncomfortable. Fearful thoughts crept into his head, which began to be amplified by the noise of the leaves of bushes growing near the edge of the forest. Our hero began to peer through the trees and was not seriously frightened. Yes, someone was wandering there. It was clearly visible that something was walking back and forth inside the forest, as if he did not dare to come to the edge. Ivan sat and looked closely. Maybe it seems, he thought. Suddenly the rustling of the leaves stopped abruptly and everything went quiet. Vanyok began to visually inspect the entire glade, every tree, every bush, as the silhouette he spotted where they used to have a dining place terrified him. Shit! Who's standing there? Wake up! Don't wake up! Flashlight, let's shine it! He thought, frantically trying to find that device designed to destroy the darkness. Without long rummaging, the right thing was found, and the light struck where the creature supposedly stood. Ah, shit! Ivan shouted loudly with fear, dropping the flashlight. Yes, he managed to see the creature that was chasing Max today before he dropped the thing that was emitting light from the batteries. He saw the creature smiling, saw its fangs, its long claws. The scream woke the boys, and Ivan took the flashlight and shined it again in the same place, but there was no one there anymore. What is it? Max asked. It's here, it's near. Frantically and fearfully Ivan answered. Oh, I imagined it. Looking around, Roman said. Look. Followed Nicholas. 3 meters away from the edge of the forest, about 30 meters to the right of the camp, an old woman, dressed in rags, was standing under the moonlight. Her gray hair, her wrinkled face and her wicked smile were clearly visible. Her eyes glowed red like little fires, her mouth was filled with fangs as sharp as blades, and she stood motionless, looking hungrily at the boys. At the sight of all this, they went into a stupor. Their hearts beat with fear, as if they were about to burst out of their chests. Without thinking, the old woman turned toward the forest and left the shore. What does she want? Why isn't she attacking? What is going on? The boys asked each other. Suddenly there was a noise in the place where Ivan had seen something. All the talking stopped, and everyone immediately looked in that direction. Again the old woman was looking at them. This time she was standing in the shadows, only a silhouette and 2 small red lights were visible. Roman, without thinking too much, started throwing stones at her. Get out of here! You beast! The old woman remained motionless until one of the stones almost reached her head, but a sharp movement of the witch's hand stopped it. There was a terrible demonic laugh. The witch swung around and threw the stone back. Roma barely managed to dodge it. The boulder flew past and from the speed of the flight it slammed into the ground like a small meteorite. What do you want? Roman shouted. In response, the old woman let out a heart-rending shriek that sent shivers down the boy's spine. Suddenly everything around abruptly fell silent, and in a couple of moments the forest stirred. The boys were really scared, because they couldn't figure out what was going on. Literally in half a minute hundreds of green eyes were glittering between the trees. These creatures were running, having fun, laughing, like hyenas, but for some reason they dared not leave the forest. Despite that, the boys were very afraid, because the creature that attacked Max had exactly the same eyes, and now there were hundreds of them. And the witch's silhouette, at the same time, stood motionless in the same place. Why they would not leave the forest was a mystery to the boys. As if reading these thoughts, the old woman moved towards the boys, and her army of little devils followed her. Yes, coming out into the moonlight, they were smaller in size than their congener who had stolen the boat during the day. The boys grabbed their makeshift spears and prepared to fight to the last, but something stopped this procession of servants of darkness. They stopped 15 meters away from the camp and did not dare to go further. Then, without thinking twice, Max took a burning log and tossed it in the direction of the witch. At the sight of fire, the demons rushed away, back to the forest. "Ha! They're afraid of fire!" shouted Max, rejoicing. And the witch, meanwhile, stood in the same place and just as viciously continued to stare at the boys with her blood-red eyes. Her servants rushed back into the forest, all but one, out of fear of meeting fire. Between the trees, the two green lights were still glittering, and they were changing their position with amazing speed. And then the witch made a gesture, and the creature came out and stood beside her. It was the same creature that had stolen the boat. The boys stood and just looked in the direction of their enemies, expecting some action, but it did not happen. After a while, the evil creatures began to disappear in the darkness of the night. With every minute the moon was gone, leaving only their silhouettes. Even the eyes of these creatures disappeared in this darkness. The boys sat down and stared silently at the edge of the forest, fearful of any action from their enemies. Time passed, it began to dawn, and again our heroes fell asleep. With the first rays of sunlight the old woman and her faithful obedient monster left. Who knows how they will behave the next night, but the boys now know one thing: they are afraid of fire.